You are watching the World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bawa. We've got an action-packed bulletin lined up for you. Let's begin with the headlines we're tracking at the moment. Amidst a backdrop of economic turbulence and strained relations with India, Pakistan stands firm in its commitment to advancing its nuclear program. This is what has been revealed by a senior US intelligence official in a recent congressional testimony. European Union leaders have agreed to impose new sanctions on Iran's drone and missile producers over Tehran's unprecedented weekend attack on Israel. It's an anxious wait for families of 17 Indians held hostage on a cargo ship in Iran with Israel links. Among them, 3 are from Tamil Nadu. NDTV Sam Daniels speaks to the brother of one of the marine engineers. Canada will ask the wealthy to pay higher taxes as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government seeks to shore up flagging support among young voters ahead of an election expected next year. World Bank President Ajay Banga, Bollywood actor Alia Bhatt, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, Olympian wrestler Sakshi Malik and actor-director Dev Patel are among the Indians who have made it to the prestigious Times list of 100 most influential people in the world. Well, our big focus, amidst a backdrop of economic turbulence and strained relations with neighbouring India, Pakistan stands firm in its commitment to advancing its nuclear program, as revealed by a senior US intelligence official in a recent congressional testimony. In fact, Lieutenant General Jeffrey Cruz, the director of the Defence Intelligence Agency, he highlighted that Pakistan's resilience in pursuing nuclear modernization, these efforts were happening despite them facing significant financial challenges on ground zero. Now, for further clarity, let's go across to my colleague Mohammed Ghazali, who joins us with a quick roundup of what has been happening. Ghazali, bring us up to date. We've heard lots of revelations by a top US intel official.
What he has stressed is that Pakistan's defense policy is strongly influenced by its contentious relationship with India. And despite the economic turmoil, as highlighted in that report, Pakistan continued its nuclear modernization efforts in the past year. And Mr. Cruz, who was informing or sharing this report, also informed the lawmakers there that Pakistan's efforts to seek international support, including from the UN Security Council, in resolving its dispute with India over Kashmir. But despite all this, the focus was that how, despite the economic turmoil, Pakistan has continued its nuclear modernization efforts. And he also shared certain data, like as of January 2023, Pakistan is reportedly in possession of 170 nuclear warheads, as indicated by the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. And facing financial challenges, Pakistan is also relying on support from allies such as China and Saudi Arabia to overcome its economic difficulties. And additionally, Pakistan's Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb, the Finance Minister of Pakistan, is currently in Washington to negotiate a new loan package with the International Monetary Fund. So this, and he also went on to quote about what kind of terrorist threat Pakistan has been facing, what kind of economic challenges Pakistan is facing. But despite both these challenges, the neighboring country continues with its nuclear policy, or its focus has remained on the nuclear policy all this while.
Right, thank you so much, Ghazali, for that update on the broadcast. We also have with us Calvin Dark, Global Affairs Analyst. Thank you so much, Mr. Dark, for making time for us and joining us live on NDTV. We've just heard Mohammed Ghazali's report as well. You know, poor policy choices combined with a series of shocks. There's COVID-19, the devastating floods that Pakistan saw, adverse global conditions. These have caused growth to slow, poverty to increase, and brought Pakistan to the brink of debt default. And yet now, intel from the US claims that Pakistan sustained its nuclear program despite all this turmoil, as its contentious relationship with India continues to drive its defense policy. How exactly do you evaluate this decision?
Well, yes, good to be here. I think the message from the United States in this testimony before Congress was pretty clear, that Pakistan has judged it the most, judged that continuing and strengthening its nuclear program is a priority, that it's existential to their security So much so that it has continued despite the economic challenges that you talked about. And it just goes to underscore what they perceive the threat and threats are for why they need to continue to pursue this program for deterrence. So I think that's the message that we're seeing in this testimony about Pakistan's motives. I also think that one of the other things that was noted in the testimony that's noteworthy is the connection with China, because obviously the United States is paying close attention to that, because as China becomes a partner or an increasing partner with Pakistan, particularly with arms and weapons, that's going to be something on the United States radar as well.
Right, Mr. Dak, also Islamabad modernizing its nuclear arsenal and improving the security of its nuclear materials. It's also successfully tested a medium-range ballistic missile, as per a report I read. Now, as nations continue their efforts to modernize their military capabilities, the evolving nuclear landscape undoubtedly has far-reaching implications for global security, right?
Yes, and that's why there's always got to be this balance between security, because as we talked about the economic dimension of continuing to pursue the nuclear program, without security, there is no economic prosperity. So Pakistan realizes that if that security apparatus is not secure, secure for their future, prosperity and economic development won't matter. But now that also underscores the fact that these programs have to be managed. And that's not an easy thing to do, because we have to be able to allow countries to provide for their own defense, to provide for their own deterrence. But like you said, in a world where nuclear arms are increasingly a part of nations' defense strategies, we have to make sure that that arms race doesn't put everybody in danger. And I think that's why this was important to the United States. And the United States is trying to consider what can its role be to allow countries to develop their defenses, but without upsetting the balance of power, particularly in the region and particularly as it relates to our allies.
Right. Mr. Dak, isn't it baffling that on one hand, cash-strapped Pakistan, as we've touched upon, is banking on close allies like China and Saudi Arabia for loans to actually tide over their economic woes? Pakistan's finance minister, as we speak, has actually touched down in Washington to discuss a new loan package with the IMF. Doesn't it make you question Pakistan's priority and their modus operandi?
Well, it doesn't make me question their priority, because I think it's clear their priority is that their defense is the priority, even, like I said, through the economic times. But I think that one of the things that Pakistan, I'm sure, is aware of, and that the world is watching, I know the United States is watching, is that these increased partnerships, particularly with China, are not without strings. Each of these partnerships, be it with China or with Saudi Arabia, comes with their own strings attached. And what's interesting is that this may be beneficial, for example, on the weapons cooperation, but how does that affect Pakistan's potential relations with the United States or with other countries? And so I think the message the United States is going to try to send is that Pakistan needs to be aware that the strings with some of these relationships might hinder future partnerships, potentially with the United States and others.
Right. As we wrap, I must also highlight that in Pakistan, human development outcomes remained at levels we see in much poorer countries, while per capita income growth has been declining in the face of low productivity and high fertility. But thank you so much, Calvin Dark, for making time for us and joining us live on NDTV for deeper insight into the matter.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, as we briefly mentioned, the top US intelligence official, Lieutenant General Jeffrey Cruz, has also told Congress that India in 2023 showcased itself as a global leader as it demonstrated a greater willingness to counter China's activity throughout the Indo-Pacific region and took steps to modernize its military and reduce its dependency on Russian origin equipment. Well, in other news, it's an anxious wait for families of 17 Indians who were held hostage on a cargo ship in Iran with Israel links. While presently they are safe and in touch with the families, they want the Indian government to ensure their safe return before the situation escalates. Now, among them, 3 are from Tamil Nadu. My colleague Sam Daniel Stalin spoke to the brother of one of the marine engineers. Here's what he told us.
How worried is the family?
Yeah, we have a
aged parents, like they are both 60 plus. They are pretty much like very much in distress, because this is my elder like younger brother, and he's very pet to them, and they are in very distress. And today was my mother's birthday. She couldn't even celebrate it.
What does he say? How is he?
For the past 2 days, he's been talking to us like half an hour. So because they are giving the mobile phone to contact communicate to the family for half an hour. So he's like, he assured that he is very much safe over there, and the Irans did no harm to them. They are absolutely okay. But the thing is, they don't have the communication throughout. They can communicate only for 30 minutes a day. That too, after Indian embassy spoke with the Iran people, they are now allowing us to have the communication of 30 people. So they are not worried about things. And the control of the ship is also with the master, as far as the information we got from medias and all. But apart from that, they are having the storage of food and all on a regular basis to their ship itself, as they usually have. And they are getting enough supplies of food and sleep and all. They are doing the regular activities what a ship should do in anchoring mode. So they are doing it.
Or families of these members in touch in India? 3 of them are from Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
And
I tried to contact the other 2 families as well, because I wanted to have an integration between us and to have a complaint lodged or to do something together. But I was not able to contact, like get the details of the family, because they are from different part of the region.
your brother is an engineer.
Yeah, he's an engineer, marine engineer. He's in the position of engineer over there. Yeah.
And any request, any message you have for the Indian government? Already the Indian
Yes,
embassy has
yes,
visited the members
yes,
there.
of course. And so far, I would like to appreciate and thank the Iran embassy, Indian embassy in Iran, as well as our external minister Jai Shankar as well. They took an immediate action of communicating with the Iran for the safety and welfare of the 17 people. Their effort only the 17 crew members were able to talk with the family. That's itself a biggest success. The Indian government should act very immediately, because we don't know what the situation may prevail after few days, because we are hearing news and we are seeing news.
That's the worry.
Yeah, that's the biggest worry our parents have, because my father is also a mariner. We should take immediate action on bringing them back as soon as possible. So that is one of the requests from 17 families I give to them, because one of them among them is a girl over there who's a trainee.
Thank you very much. Hope the government would intervene soon and help you rejoin with your brother and other members with their families.
And against the backdrop of Iran's attack on Israel to avenge the Israeli bombing of their consulate in Syria, the European Union has announced that they will widen sanctions against Iran. Now, this announcement was actually made by the European Council President after the first day of a 2-day summit of EU leaders in Brussels. Now, these sanctions actually plan on targeting the companies that are needed to manufacture the drones and missiles, although the finer details are yet to be worked out. But the European Council also made a statement that the EU will take further restrictive measures against Iran, notably in relation to unmanned aerial vehicles as well as missiles. Well, switching tracks. High expectations have been set for India's economic progress amidst IMF's positive growth projections and Tesla's imminent launch in our country. Gauri Dwivedi interviewed Indian economist K.V. Subramaniam, who expressed great optimism for the future of our country. He also claims that the Tesla factory in India will be a total game changer and predicts that India will exceed the IMF's projections. Listen in.
We're speaking at a time when global majors are set to come to India, make big ticket investments, whether it's Tesla, whether it's Apple, they're all looking to make India their manufacturing hub. This will give a fillip to India's aspirations to be a manufacturing hub, but how far do you think we are from achieving those kind of ambitions?
So I think these developments are very, very important, especially Tesla. And Apple has already set up shop. And, when I was checking some of the data, About 150,000 jobs have already been created by direct jobs have been created by Apple establishing, in India, and about 4 trillion rupees of iPhones have been produced in the last year, of which about 1.2 trillion just for exports, and this with only 14% of global production of Apple happening in India. So you can get a sense of how important some of these very important manufacturers setting up shop in India will be for India's manufacturing sector growth. I think Tesla will be very important. If you look at the experience that we had with the automobile sector in the 1980s, the Maruti 800, for instance, was just being assembled in India, with all the components being imported from Suzuki. But over decades, actually, the entire ancillary and the entire support system, developed, which is testimony to the way a sector grows. Same is now happening with electronics manufacturing as well. So I think given the importance of of Tesla and especially e-vehicles, I think this would be a very, very important marquee investment for India and its manufacturing sector growth.
So you think Tesla coming to India could be the big game changer that Indian manufacturing has been waiting for?
Well, I would say that, Apple coming in, setting shop, Samsung, I think all of those very important landmarks. In a similar way, Tesla coming, will certainly be an important landmark as well.
Sir, firstly, the IMF report card that has come out as far as the health of the global economy, it puts India right at the center in terms of being a key driver of global growth. How satisfied are you with the numbers that are being put out, given that you've felt in the past and successively that India can actually achieve 8% and higher growth rates?
So Gauri, if you look at the numbers that have been put up for the year 2023, which actually corresponds to our financial year ending March of 2024, IMF is estimating growth at 7.8%. And I think that is closer to what I expect. You would recall that in the first 3 quarters, we've had growth of 8.2%, 8.1% and 8.4%. And so even with a lower, that compared to these 3 quarters, even at 7.3% growth in the 4th quarter, which I think the numbers will come out in May, India will have annual growth of 8%. So the 7.8% estimate for 2023 is closer to what I expect. For the next year, which is 2024, the fund has estimated growth at 6.5%. I think that it's likely that growth will be 7% and thereabouts. So I do think that there is scope, as it has happened. If you notice, the projection for even this year, funds projection originally was significantly lower. And as the numbers have come through, they've actually revised it upwards. I expect a similar thing to happen, I guess, for the next year as well.
But why do you think, or do you think that there is a disconnect between how you view India's economic potential as compared to how IMF views the same?
So if you go by the data, in September of 2021, when we were emerging out of the pandemic, in my media interactions, I had mentioned that India will have 7% plus growth, and that is what has indeed transpired. If you look at the projections of the fund, IMF staff's projections, they have been less than 7%, while growth has actually been more than 7%. So I guess the data speaks for itself.
Well, in other news, the Biden administration said it would not renew a license that has now expired that had broadly eased Venezuela oil sanctions, moving to reimpose punitive measures in response to President Nicolas Maduro's failure to meet his election commitments. Now, just hours before the deadline, the U.S. Treasury Department announced that it had issued a replacement license, giving companies 45 days to wind down their business and transactions in the OPEC countries' oil and gas sector. But here's some context for you. Washington had repeatedly threatened in recent months to reinstate energy sanctions unless Mr. Maduro made good on his promises. That led to partial U.S. sanctions relief from October, following a U.S.-backed election deal between the government and the Venezuelan opposition. And Canada has revealed a new tax on wealthy individuals that will bring in billions of dollars over the next 5 years to help the government fund housing programs designed to win over disgruntled voters. We have the details lined up for you right after this very short break. Well, Canada will ask the wealthy to pay higher taxes as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government seeks to shore up flagging support among young voters ahead of an election expected next year. The Canadian Minister of Finance has said in the annual budget announcement that the wealthiest Canadians should pay more, while billions of dollars would be invested in education, housing, jobs, and mental health services. Now, this budget proposes 53 billion Canadian dollars, which is about 38 billion US dollars, in new spending over 5 years, much of it directed towards millennials and Gen Z in the form of affordable housing, student grants and loans, rent subsidies, and work placement programs. So what exactly is the Trudeau government proposing? Well, under these new proposals, capital gains over 250,000 Canadian dollars would be taxed at 66.7%. That's up from 50%. Raising nearly 20 billion Canadian dollars in revenue over the next 5 years. Now, while the Canadian government denies that the latest budget is mainly a political exercise, their Minister of Finance nonetheless acknowledged that for anyone under the age of 40 in Canada, it's just harder to establish yourself than it was for the generations that came before. But it's crucial to note that some experts on Ground Zero are arguing that this is not a game-changing budget. It continues Canada on the path of increased spending and taxation, leaving long-term challenges such as productivity and competitiveness largely unaddressed and kicking the fiscal responsibility can down the road. Well, in other crucial news, an engineer at Boeing has said that the aircraft company, in rushing to produce as many planes as possible, is taking manufacturing shortcuts that could lead to jetliners breaking apart. On the other hand, Boeing has said that it has improved production quality to meet the standards. Now, to quote the engineer, he said they are putting out defective airplanes. This is what Sam Salipore has told members of a Senate subcommittee. Salipore was also testifying about Boeing's 787 Dreamliner, hundreds of which are in use by airlines, mostly on international routes. He spoke while another Senate committee held a separate hearing on the safety culture at Boeing. Now, these dual hearings were actually a sign of the intense pressure on Boeing since a door plug panel blew off a 737 MAX jetliner during an Alaska Airlines flight in January. The company is under multiple investigations, and the FBI has told passengers from the flight that they might be victims of a crime. Well, in other news, Hugh Grant has accepted an enormous settlement from The Sun, the tabloid, in return for dropping his claim that he was illegally targeted by the newspaper's journalists. He had accused The Sun of unlawfully tapping his phone, bugging his car, and breaking into his home to snoop on him. Grant had said he had wanted to fight the case and go to trial where The Sun's top executives could be called to give evidence, but he has concluded he cannot afford to turn down the payout from the Rupert Murdoch-owned newspaper, which he will be donating to press regulation charities. And finally, World Bank President Ajay Banga, Bollywood actor Alia Bhatt, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, Olympian wrestler Sakshi Malik, and actor-director Dev Patel are among the Indians who have made it to the prestigious Times list of 100 most influential people in the world. Times 100 Most Influential People of 2024 also includes US Department of Energy's Loan Programs Office Director Jigar Shah, Professor of Astronomy and Professor of Physics at Yale University Priyamvada Natarajan, and Indian origin restaurateur Asma Khan. Thank you for investing your time in watching this edition of The World 24/7 on the NDTV network. We'll be tracking all the latest updates for you from India and around the world. Do stay tuned.